Well, good afternoon, parents and family members to our Hawkeye Parent and Family webinar series. My name is Danielle Martinez, and I work in academic support and retention and will be your moderator for today's webinar. These monthly webinars are designed to integrate parents and family members as stakeholders in your student's education and provide you with up-to-date information that might apply to your student's transition to the University of Iowa. We understand that you're an important part of your student support system and that you may they may continue to seek your advice and guidance on many issues ranging from roommate concerns to grades or health resources or what to do in their courses. So today we want you to be an informed resource. So we hope that these webinars provide a platform for us to consistently engage with you by providing a proactive, open forum for questions, concerns, and dialogue. Our webinar today is From High School to College, Student Privacy and Communication, and it's hosted by our office, Academic Support and Retention, the Office of the Registrar, and the Academic Advising Center. And our guest speakers today are Larry Lockwood, he is the Assistant Provost and University Registrar from the Office of the Registrar, and Maureen Schaefer, who is the Senior Associate Director from the Academic Advising Center. In our webinar today, you'll gain a greater understanding of FERPA and how it relates to the communication you'll be given from the University of Iowa, understand the differences and what you might have received from communication from the institution from high school now to college, and understand how to implement a communication plan that works best for your family. As a reminder, each webinar is recorded and then posted online on the Academic Support and Retention website, so it can be accessed at a later date or viewed by individuals who are not able to attend. Therefore, during the presentations, your mic function will be muted. Later on, we'll have a live question and answer portion where you can type your questions into the question box on the side. So let's go ahead and get started with an overview of FERPA and student privacy with Larry.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Larry Lockwood. FERPA was passed in 1974. It's the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, and it protects the privacy of the students' educational records in the schools that receive funding from the Secretary of Education. FERPA was passed in 1974, but there were previous legislation passed earlier that will present why this was necessary. In 1972, the age of majority law was passed, where it gave all the rights for drinking, for smoking, for signing contracts to 18 to 21-year-olds. This was done in March of 1972 and came out of the Vietnam War. If we can send 18-year-olds off to fight and to die, we certainly can give them the rights that every other person has at age 18. Under FERPA, colleges must not release educational records without the written consent of the student. This regulation does not apply to some directory information that we deem as directory information, such as name and phone number, dorm room, etc. And I'll give you a list of that later on. Unless the student has blocked disclosure. So we do give the right to block that information to the student. Only about 400 students out of our 32,000 students on campus have blocked that information. They would rather have someone be able to get a hold of them than to block any information. Under FERPA, college students have the right to access their own records, to seek correction of erroneous records, block disclosure, or all directory information, and block all directory information. Some of the directory information, if you look a little bit further at the next slide, their local address and phone number, their email address, the hometown and state they're from, their Hawkeye ID, the college, class and year, dates of attendance, major, fact that they're full or part-time, most recent educational institution attended, the degrees awarded, etc. And at the last one is the height and weight of the athletic team members. Now, when this law was passed, apparently there's a little humor going on in the federal government, just like there is today. And the different senators from different states wanted to know how big the front line was, and so this got added to the law. And so now we have to produce a list of the height and weight of the football team, which is ridiculous. We laugh every time somebody asks for that, by the way. So directory information, generally speaking, directory information may be released without the student consent. And that's usually done, usually if there's been a request by the Department of Education or the State Department of Education. And we usually give only statistical information and gross statistical information. Usually the name of the student's not associated with the record we release. So releasing directory information off campus, external requests of information are handled through the Office of the Registrar. If a company asks for a list of students from us, we will provide that for them, because in Iowa we have an open records law that any public information can be released publicly. So their names, their addresses, the information that we just talked about on the page before would be releasable. But we get the name and address of the requester, the indicated interest in directory information, the names and addresses of the persons to whom the records are going to, and the date of disclosure. We maintain this information in case our information was used erroneously or illegally, and it's been done a few times. Some of the requests that we get on a routine basis is from the military. So we allow them to have access to, once a semester, to the names, and they usually send it out. And what they're doing is sending out recruiting information. We also send it out to Mama's Cookie Company here in town, and when they send advertisements to the students, they do it through the email. And she's interested in selling her cookies. The same thing's true of other restaurants here in town that are trying to get in contact with the students. We can't block that request. We must go ahead and handle it. And so there's about 250 to 300 requests a semester for this type of information. One of the rights that a student has is that they can take a look at the records at any time. So they can come into our office and want to see what their transcript looks like or any records that we might maintain. And what we've done over the last 5 to 10 years is to electronically give them access to everything. There isn't anything in our student record system that the student doesn't have access to. So they can go out through ISIS, which is our student record system that students register through, that they update their information, change of address. All of those processes can be done through ISIS, and they have total access to their financial aid information, their billing information, their grade system, and they can pass this information on to you, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on. Some of the people who can access the student record here on campus may include faculty, administrators, researchers, clerical, professional employees, support staff, and members of the Board of Trustees. And any student who might be serving on a committee, such as a review committee and an appeals committee. We usually involve our students with many of the student committees that we have, or faculty or administrative committees we have on campus, because we feel that students are our business and students need to know what's going on at all times. So even if a student withheld their information, these type of committees, if they have an educational need to know, have access to that information. Now, there are other organizations that can access this information too, such as if we receive a subpoena, we would have to send a record off to that agency, but we would also send it to the student at the same time, saying that their record had been subpoenaed. Persons and organizations providing financial aid. So we do get requests from banks to verify full-time attendance for a student. National Student Clearinghouse is a place that we also send information to. We would send information to a request from a dean's office, although they do now have access electronically to all that information. accrediting organizations come in and review, spot check student records to make sure that what they're being taught, what their courses are on their transcript, are what this institution says they should be. And they're spot checked periodically, like every 5 years. Authorized representatives from the government agencies come in and evaluate and audit records as well. But usually they're looking at 1% of the student records. So and it's the total student record that we give them. What about parental rights? Well, FERPA's rights transfer to the student when they come to a post-secondary institution. So in high school, you had access to the student record, you spoke for the student, you're the parent, you were in control. But once they come to the university, whether they be 16 or 17 years old, the rights transfer to the student. Unlike the general population, parents of students under the age of 21 may be given access to information regarding violation of law and university policy and controlled substance if the parent has that information on your taxes. So if you declare them as a student, or I should say, if you declare them as a dependent and they're under the age of 21, we would be in contact with you if something like this happened. An alcohol problem, a drug problem, anything that violation of the student rules, you may be contacted. If there's an emergency situation where the student becomes ill, or you feel that there is an issue going on with them that you don't understand, and it's for the health and welfare of the student, you can contact the university and we will talk about the student. So you wouldn't need consent of the student to talk about them, especially for health and welfare. We want to make sure that the students are safe and that any issues that are present, that we can resolve them for the benefit of the student. So we do have a system that we created a number of years ago to allow access to the student record. It's called a guest account. Parents, guardians, and others may be granted access to view the student record through this guest account. Students will grant the level of access to you, and you may have up to 3 active accounts at any one time, and this allows for divorced parents to both have access to the student record and a third party as well. The students create a guest account through ISIS. So the student will go in to their ISIS account and tab down to their guest account and set up a password for you. And that password will be yours, and you can access that student record, certain levels of that student record, as much as you want. So the student would set this account up, call you, and then let you know what your password is. And then you can access different levels of information. You can look at the admissions profile. You can view their schedule, their grades, their financial aid. You can view fees, the billing, the 1098 account. There's a number of other accesses that you would have access to, as well as the automated payment system. And we felt that allowing the student to give you this access will benefit you and the campus, because students often don't get things done on time, and you will. So we want you to have this access, and we want to have an open dialogue with you as much as possible too, if there are issues that are related to the student. Changing and deleting access is the right of the student. So once they give you that access, they could delete that access at any time. A number of years ago, when we were doing this with paper and we gave a presentation at orientation, many of the parents says, well, we want that form to allow us to get access. And so we turned in forms, and out of the freshman class of 4,400 students, 3,750 filled out a form to give access to the parents. When they came to campus in the fall, 3,168 took that access away. So that wasn't a good process. But here, as long as you're communicating with your son and daughter, we have set this system up to allow as easy of access as possible. So do talk to your son or daughter to get your password and to get access to those levels and areas that you'd like. Then we have some shots here that show you how you gain that guest access. And the registrar's office also has a website that you can go to get the same information. Viewing the student information, I'm going to see if there's a couple other ones. Oh, award notifications, aid disbursement. There are a number of other screens that we're going to give you access to. The university is also in the future planning in ISIS will allow you to set up your own passwords and not have to go through your child once they give you access. So once you get your first password and first sign on, you can change your own in the future. So much of what the student sees, you will be able to see at some point in time. Now, if you have the student's password and sign on, you have total access to their entire system. We discourage that because the student may change their password and then you don't have the correct password to get into the system. And then you're going to call us and say, I lost that password. What is my student's password? And we're not going to give it to you. So do stay in communication with the son or daughter so that if they've given you that access, that you can continue to have it. Now FERPA doesn't affect the parent conversation with academic advisors, only that you are given permission to talk to the advisor. The student can go out on ISIS and allow access to you to talk to anyone on campus or a specific advisor, and that student can also set a date range. They can say forever, or they can say this week or today, but that access is allowable by your student through permission that's on ISIS. And we hope that if an issue does come up, that they use that to allow you to have that access, because when you call us, that's the first thing we'll check to see if you are given permission to talk about certain issues that the student's having problems with. So, parent inquiries. So that's kind of an overview of the FERPA rules as the registrar's office sees them. And now I'd like to give you to Maureen Schaefer.
Well, thank you, Larry. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maureen Schaefer. I'm from the Academic Advising Center, and I'm happy to be here with you today. So Larry has shared some important information that you likely didn't know about FERPA and how FERPA comes into play with you and how you interact with your students. I'd like to talk a little bit about how FERPA comes into play when parents contact the university seeking information related to their students, and I'll share that from the perspective of academic advising. You may know from orientation that the staff that I work with at the Academic Advising Center advises the majority of first-year students at the university. The only students we do not advise are those who are directly admitted to their college, the College of Engineering, the College of Nursing, and Business. So the perspective that I'll provide today is from my work at the Academic Advising Center, but I think the approach we will discuss will help with any interaction you might have with a faculty or staff member at the university. When I think about the occasions when parents call the Academic Advising Center, I think there are typically two general categories of reasons that parents call. The first one is questions related to monitoring students' academic progress at the university, and the other set of questions, or the category, falls under questions related to seeking information. So I want to talk about those two categories a little bit more. So when parents contact us about monitoring academic progress for students, one of the reasons that I think we get those phone calls is because this is a big area of change from high school to college, how students monitor their progress and how much information they have at any given time. Our advisors will talk with students about how to monitor this progress and kind of the change from high school to college. As you know, in most high schools, students have access to some sort of website or web portal such as PowerSchool to monitor each of their classes. And these sites really get students used to being able to get a snapshot view of their progress in each class, all of the assignments, their current grades, and often even their current overall GPA. And that level of detail is not going to be similar here at the university. Students at Iowa use a website called ICON, which stands for Iowa Courses Online. And when they log into their ICON site, it's password protected, so they log into their own site, they'll most likely see each of their courses listed. The level to which professors use ICON can vary. Some post all assignments there, some post announcements, some collect papers there through the Dropbox function, and many record grades there. This is good for you to know so that you can ask your student if they're monitoring their grades on ICON. But what it doesn't have is a running tab of their grades as they had in high school. So they need to check their course syllabus for the grading scale to know where they stand. Some courses are graded on a curve, and they may not know where they stand grade-wise until the end of the semester. When students are uncertain of their grades, we usually tell them to talk to their TA or professor to get further clarification, and those can be really helpful conversations. We find that first-year students are a little intimidated to go see professors and TAs during office hours, but they really do get more comfortable with that over time, and you may have experienced that in high school as well, that they're intimidated at first, and once they realize how helpful it is, they're more likely to go in the future. Sometimes parents will call us to check to see how students are doing in their classes. And even if a student has given consent for us as academic advisors to speak to their parents, we still don't know how they're doing in each of their classes. We don't, as advisors, have access to their ICON site. We have access to midterm grades that are reported for classes where students are doing work below a C-, and we have access to the transcript of the final grades. So we really talk with students about it's their responsibility to keep up with their classes and how they're doing to monitor their progress. As I mentioned, this is a significant change from high school, and we help students navigate the tools available to them because it's going to be an important skill that they'll need all 4 years. And we really appreciate your help in talking to students about how they're monitoring their progress. And if your student has questions about this, they can certainly talk to their professors, TAs, and their academic advisor. So the next category of information when I think about the calls that come in from parents kind of fall under the category of seeking some type of information from us. And this can take the shape of seeking information about their student or seeking information about policies and procedures. And I want to prepare you for how these conversations might go and also give you some tips on how to ask questions. In general, we encourage you to get as much information from your student as possible and then contact us if you still have questions. If you're calling to seek information about your student, this is where we will be limited by FERPA, and the advisor will likely tell you that over the phone. If your student has completed the online academic records consent form that Larry referred to, we can more freely talk with you about their situation. But even if they haven't, I still think the conversation can be fruitful, even if we don't have full consent from your student. There are still lots of things we can talk about. And this is where you asking the right questions can help. My main recommendation is for you to ask us your question in the frame of a policy, procedure, or philosophy. If you frame your question in that way, there's a lot we can talk about. Where we're limited is in sharing personal information about our interactions with your student. So let's look at an example. Mary is the mother of a first-year student at Iowa, and Mary gets the sense that her daughter is kind of floundering in school. She's not sure that the daughter's seen her advisor. Her daughter reports that her first few tests haven't gone well, and Mary's not sure if her daughter knows about the resources available to her. She's really worried, and she's not really sure that she's getting the full story from her daughter. Mary feels stuck and doesn't know what to do, which is probably a common scenario for parents. She doesn't want to be a helicopter parent, but is wondering how this is going to go for her daughter. In that circumstance, I think it's okay for Mary as the mother to call us in that situation. I would recommend that she start the conversation by telling the advisor or whoever she's talking to that she's aware of FERPA and how we're limited in what we can share because of the federal privacy law, but to let the person know up front that she's calling to inquire about our process and that she wants to get some advice. She can then structure her questions to ask about procedures, not about specific interactions with her daughter. So the first question might be, if a first-year student is struggling at Iowa, how do you know? When do students come in for advising? After she would get the answers to those questions, she can ask for specific advice on where she and her daughter can get information with academic help resources on campus. And then Mary, as the mother, is welcome to then share any information that she wants with us. The more the advisor knows about what is going on with the student, the more they can help. Remember, FERPA doesn't prevent you from talking. You can share all you want. And while the advisor can't say it on the phone, likely we'll outreach to your student after that. Once we know more information about a student who's struggling, we're going to reach out if we haven't seen that student. But remember that the advisor can't necessarily tell you if the student was in that day or the day before. So as we come to the end of our structured portion of this, I just want to share a little bit about our philosophy. And I think it's important for you to know that we really have a developmental approach to our work with students. Our role is to help your student navigate the university, and we really view every interaction as a teachable moment so that as time goes on, they have the skills to help themselves. It's really kind of similar to parenting in that we're teaching them to not need us anymore as time goes on. In this process, if you run interference for them, they don't gain valuable skills that they need to navigate the university. So the approach that we recommend is that you talk to your student, and if they're confused or need some help, talk with them about their options and encourage them to reach out to the appropriate person to help them. Once they do this, they will build that skill and they're more likely to reach out in the future. And as I said before, you may have seen this happen in high school where they were intimidated at first, but were able to navigate a little bit better over time on their own. And if you feel stuck and want some advice, definitely give us a call. We really are a partnership. We value your role in that process. So we want to hear from you if you're not getting the information that you need from your student. And in general, I want you to know that FERPA doesn't prevent us from talking to you. It changes the conversation, what we're able to say and not say, but it doesn't prevent us from talking to you. As an example, I took a parent phone call yesterday and was able to have a lengthy conversation with a mother without even knowing who her student was for most of the conversation. She shared information about her daughter and the situation, and I was able to share with her what resources we have at Iowa to support her student. Near the end of the conversation, I took the student's name so that I could ensure that we would follow up with the student, but in no way did FERPA prevent us from having a successful conversation. So we will navigate this new road along with you as we all work to help your students succeed at Iowa. At this point, I'll turn it over to Danielle to engage maybe in a little bit of question and answer.
Yeah, so thanks so much, Maureen and Larry, for all the great information about FERPA and how we can use this to help guide our conversations. So now we're going to move into the question and answer portion of our webinar. Please remember that we have lots of folks attending. If presenters, as Maureen mentioned, are unable to answer very specific things about your students, but are able to talk about policies or procedures or things that might be able to help you guide your student. If you have a question, please feel free to type it into the question box on your GoToMeeting sidebar. We'll read the question out loud so all participants can hear, and then the presenters will answer. If we're unable to get to your question during the webinar, we will follow up with you via email to make sure that we answer your question. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's see. Well, we might not have any questions today. Oh, there we go. They may just take a moment to load. So looks like we have, does the password for access to a student's ISIS record expire at any length of time?
Well, yes, it does. It first started expiring after 90 days, and we knew that that was a problem. So I think you have 1 year to change your password. We're trying to make sure that this is the same rule for the rest of camp. We have to change our passwords after 1 year. So we'd like that, like to use the same criteria.
Great. And then we also got a question about how you can remind us to where to find a FERPA release for the students so that they can sign off.
The FERPA release is on the student record on ISIS. So all the students use ISIS to register. They use it to change their address. It's easy to go onto ISIS for the student and to let them know, put the dates in that they're going to release and who that information is being released to. Or the same thing, who you want to talk to.
Excellent. Maureen, we have a question about how do we structure a conversation with students to ask them about their grades?
Yeah, this is a really good point and something I forgot to mention when I was talking about the difference between grades in high school and grades in college. In high school, students have lots of grades, so there's lots of information that they're checking on a daily basis in high school for homework that's been graded. That it really changes at the university because they may have a lot of work to do here, but it may be that in one of their classes, their entire grade is based on 2 exams and a final. And so I think the question to ask your student is, tell me about the grading for your different classes. How is it varying, and how do you feel about your progress so far? Because it really is going to vary by class, and so I think that will open up a conversation then to determine if the student needs to go and talk to a professor or TA about their grade for a particular class. But especially at this point in time, we're in week 3. They very likely have not had anything graded yet, depending on their classes, so that's not uncommon.
Maureen, there's a logistical question on where a student can find their advisor. Sometimes they come for orientation, it's a whirlwind of information, and they don't remember that person's name.
Absolutely. So that is going back to Larry's response before, students should go into their ISIS account, and when they get into ISIS, there is a menu at the top that says student records, and under their student records menu is where they can find advisor information. So that is very important for them to know.
Hey Larry, going back to the question about guest ID, there's some folks who are wondering when it expires. So some folks it expires in November. Can that expiration date be changed?
Yes, yeah, you can change the expiration date when your son or daughter gives you a new password. So if she gives you a new password, you can change it now, or you can change it in October, then you'd get an additional time.
There's a question about if the RAs are allowed to speak to parents with how their student is doing.
Well, if you put the RA on that release information to talk to the RA, then yes, you would have access to them. The RAs do have access to student record information because they have to work with the students. So having your son or daughter put that person's name in that file or under that release form, then that's the RA can talk to you about any issues that are going on in the dorm.
But what you're saying, Larry, is without that release, RAs are held to the same restrictions that we are.
We are, right.
Yeah. I would also say that sometimes RAs are probably a little bit more difficult to get a hold of because they are also students. And so just as my own experience formerly working in housing, sometimes a hall coordinator is an easier person to get a hold of because they are a full-time staff member who supervises RAs. And so they have all their information. All right. Oh, we have one more coming in. So folks want to know who else can see their child's educational record, just their advisor and their instructors, or there are other folks on campus?
Well, out of the dean's office, there are people that help students all the time. So there's actually 2,600 people on this campus that can view the student record. So we're one of the most open on campus. We don't want a student not to be able to talk to somebody. And if they came in to talk to me, I'm going to open up their student record and take a look to see what the issues are. If it's financial, we'll look at their financial aid. We'll talk about options. I'll give them somebody to talk to at the financial aid's office that can help them. If they've received their aid and they need more money, we'll talk about short-term loans that they might get access to. But I will involve somebody in the financial aid's office as well, and they can get access to the student record. So what we're trying to do is, the more open the record is on campus, the better we can help the student.
That looks like that's all the questions that we have. So thank you everybody for attending. That's all we have for you today. Thank you to our presenters, Larry Lockwood and Maureen Schaefer, and thank you for joining us. Just a reminder, all webinars will be posted online at uc.uiowa.edu/family-resources. If you're unable to get if you have other questions and want them answered later, you can email us at uc-retention@uiowa.edu for a response from a University of Iowa staff member. Or they can call Larry Lockwood, and his phone number is 319-335-0217. Please join us for our next month's webinar, which is handling homesickness. So we know that homesickness is sort of coming on for students right around now. They might be missing you. And so join us next month as we talk about that and strategies for success, hosted by the Academic Support and Retention Team and University Counseling Service on Friday, October 2nd from noon to 1. Thank you so much, and on Iowa, go Hawks.